So do not ever have enemies, chat. You have no enemies. A Vinland Saga analysis. So it's the philosophy of Vinland Saga. Let's lock in, chat. Spoilers ahead.
You have no enemies. A statement that seems rather impossible when you first hear it. Of course we have enemies. Just look throughout history. History is full with nations making enemies.
Yeah, it's because they are making them the enemy. They're giving them a special importance and treating them as a villain so they can fight that villain and feel satisfaction for something that villain did to them. Therefore, they are being considered the enemy.
Enemies with other nations and solving this conflict only through means of war and violence.
But it doesn't have to be war and violence. They do not have to make them the enemy in the first place.
Or even if you look smaller, we individually have enemies. And whether it's a school bully, an ex that hurts you, or even an annoying coworker that just won't shut up, making enemies is inherent to human nature.
It is inherent to human nature, but it doesn't mean you can't avoid it. Like me personally, I have many haters. But do I make them my enemy? No. I do not give my haters especially importance. I do not do that. Because if I do that, I know that they will feel that I'm being consumed by darkness. The darkness is erupting in me. And they will be happy about it. So you know what? I never give my haters special importance, chat. That you must never do. Never make another person who hates you an enemy, or a person that does something to you an enemy. Just consider them a person that went through a lot of trauma in the past. Therefore, they will do specific things to make you feel the same trauma they went through.
But what if I told you this wasn't the case? What if I told you that you in fact don't have enemies? Famous French poet says, all wars are civil wars because men are brothers. And I don't think these words are portrayed any better than the Makoto Yokimura's Vinland Saga. You have no enemies. These were the words spoken by the late and great Thors, aka the Troll of Joms. But in order to understand a sentence of this magnitude, you must first understand the world in which Vinland Saga exists in. And we do this by looking at the character Thorkel, who I believe perfectly embodies the Viking world. Thorkel the Tall served as our main antagonistic force throughout most of the series, and I think he perfectly represents what a Viking ought to be. Thors was a Joms Viking.
Yeah, Thorkel was a one-of-a-kind Viking, bro. Like, legit. Like, as soon as he entered the show, you felt the aura. When him and Thorfinn first fought, chef kiss. It is amazing. Like, I cannot even describe it.
Along with Thor's back in the day.
But I wouldn't say he's the first major villain. I think Askeladd is the first major villains in the show. As you all know what Askeladd did to the guy's father. Thorfinn's father. I even forgot his name for a second. So yeah, you all know what Askeladd did to Thorfinn's father.
And he was this big, brute, larger-than-life type of figure where every time he stepped on a battlefield, his presence had to be recognized. And Thorkel's greatness as a Viking doesn't just end at his physical attributes. Thorkel is quite literally the strongest Viking alive. And this is shown by every time we see him in battle. He's always doing some outstanding feat, like hauling massive boulders and logs, killing multiple people at the same time, dual-wielding axes, and single-handedly keeping an English defense force that was, quite frankly, losing the war, still staying in the game by just his presence alone. And he loves it all. He loves war, he loves violence, he loves fighting, he loves conflict. And
it's because it gives him special attention, therefore he loved it. There are other ways to get attention, not only that.
A lot of times in the shows, he will purposely put himself into situations where there's more violence in the outcome. This entire Viking world idolizes the essence of being at war, idolizes the atmosphere of conflict, idolizing having enemies and defeating them honorably in a battle, and idolizing defending your honor to one day earn a spot in Valhalla. And Thorkel is everything about this Viking world embodied into one large, bigger-than-life giant. But if you are Thorkel the Tall, what do you have left? What do you have left when you seemingly accomplished everything you...
If I was Thorkel and I accomplished everything, I'll probably feel empty. Chat. Like, the emptiness will consume me.
You could have in this Viking world. What is there to do now? Thorkel can...
Because, I mean, imperfections are a part of someone, and when a person has accomplished everything they feel, they're obviously gonna feel empty, chat. Therefore, I say life is a journey. Don't wish that you can accomplish everything in one go. Take it day by day. That's what I do, chat. I take it day by day. So when I'm there, I realize it was such a good journey, and the journey is more important than the finishing line. Always remember that even when you're running a race, do not wait till you get to the end. Worry about the journey that you are going through to get to that end.
Brought us with an answer. Towards the end of the season, in his second rendezvous with Thorfinn, when he's explaining how his father, Thor's, came to lead the Joms Vikings, Thorkel adds that with his disappearance, it made him realize that what happens to a Viking when he's alive, or even long after he's dead, doesn't really matter. And the true thing that matters to a warrior is where his soul is. And he adds that his one regret in life is that he never followed Thor's to go find Vinland, because Thor's soul is somewhere he'll never be able to reach. And that place where he won't be able to reach is where he believes Thor's became a true warrior.
Yeah, Thor's was a true warrior. Like, Thorfinn's father was a real warrior. He sacrificed his life for his child. Even if our Thors are also do the same, I mean, come on.
And this brings us to our next stop. Further examining this Viking world and exposing it for what it truly is, peeling back the thin layers of honor and fighting for Valhalla, we really see that this Viking world truly is just a gruesome one. All these Vikings are meant to do is cause senseless violence, murder, ravage villages, assault women, and all for the name of being a good warrior. And this is where our three main characters come in. Our three characters, Thorfinn, Askeladd, and Prince Canute, all experienced this Viking world from an outside point of view. Thorfinn spent most of his youth growing up underneath the love and care of his...
Thorfinn never experienced the brutality until what happened to Thor's. Y'all know how Thor's got slimed out. So yeah. Type RIP in the chat for Thor's.
father and mother in Iceland. Prince Canute spent his time growing up in a big, pretty castle away from the horrors of war. And Askeladd, well, was just a poor Welsh boy without a father, looking to take care of his mom by any means.
See, I feel for Askeladd, but what Askeladd did in the beginning. I mean, he can be forgiven, because Vinland Saga teaches you to forgive people as well as forgive and forget the same thing that's in the Bible. So it's basically rephrasing what the Bible says, but it also teaches you do not have any enemies, do not keep enemies. Keeping the enemies would be injurious. So do not ever have enemies, chat. Like legit. Enemies will consume you. The darkness of having that enemies will consume you and take over completely, and you won't even realize it how it took over you. And trust me, when I say I had enemies back then, but Vinland Saga changed my life completely, chat.
Is necessary. And that is because our three main characters are outside of this Viking world. We're able to sit back and look from a neutral standpoint what is truly going on. It is through Thorfinn seeing his father get murdered right in front of him in such a honorless and tasteless way is when him, along with the viewer, realize...
You know, I was crying in that scene, one of the most emotional parts of the show. Such an amazing show. And you know what, chat? Always respect your parents. I might even get emotional. I'm getting emotional on the video itself. If you can't see, I'm getting a bit emotional, so I'm holding back my tears here. So yeah, chat.
Realizes that the Viking world can be cruel and is full of people without honor. And honestly...
Yes, it depends on the environment you are. Like, Thorfinn was in a Viking environment. So, technically, there is going to be trouble in a Viking environment. You cannot avoid it.
People use this veil of honor and respect to just kill mercilessly. Thor's never stood a chance against Askeladd's army because at the end of the day, they came there for one thing and one thing only.
Okay, wait, this is my take. Thor was soloing Askeladd's army. Thor was literally soloing the army. The one-man army was soloing them. Until Askeladd's man, a cheapskate, pulled up that trick. And you all know what happened to Askeladd. He got slimed out. Not Askeladd, I mean Thor. Thor got slimed out because of one cheap trick Askeladd pulled. So technically, Thor would have soloed Askeladd's entire crew and him. Like, Askeladd stood no chance against Thor's. And a 1v1 also.
To take Thor's head, and they would do anything they could in order to meet that end. There's this unspoken rule amongst Vikings in Vinland Saga is that what happens on the battlefield stays on the battlefield. Is when the battle is all said and done, it doesn't matter if I killed your father. It doesn't matter if I killed your brother. It doesn't matter if I pillaged your town. It's all just water under the bridge at this point. With Thorfinn being outside of this Viking world, it allows him, along with us, to challenge this notion. Challenge this notion of water underneath the bridge. Challenge this notion of all is said and forgotten once the war is over. Because at the end of the day, a father just got taken from his child.
Exactly. Now, personally, if I was in Thorfinn's place, I would do the same. I would try to get my revenge back. Okay, I'll be honest. Like, in that type of situation, I would. And my perspective on that hasn't changed. What my perspective has changed on. Like, if someone does something to you, do not hold them as your enemy. Never. Never hold them as your enemy. It's another thing if they mess with your parents. That's another thing altogether.
Not fair. But only Thorfinn, along with the viewer, are able to recognize this. Because we are not a part of this Viking world, which means we do not succumb to the ideals and morals that fulfill this Vinland Saga universe. We're able to step back and look back from a neutral point of view and see the true horrors of what just happened to Thor's. When we take a look at Askeladd, we realize that his mother was a slave and his father being a Danish Viking, and we realize that his existence itself is a direct example and a direct outcome of this Viking world. And with Askeladd living in a world where Vikings abuse the power that they have, and they take over poor countries and pillage and assault and impregnate women without a second thought, him being from Wales, a prime source of slaves for Vikings, he becomes direct collateral of this Viking chaos. And this horrible feeling reaches its climax when Askeladd almost sees his mother get killed by the hands of his own father who can't even recognize her. And it is then that Askeladd realizes that Artorius is never coming. Artorius is never coming back to save a world where Vikings fulfill their lustful desires for sex and women through means of having slaves and impregnating multiple women. No one is coming to save Askeladd, and nobody ever will. And finally, we have Prince Canute, a young prince who grew up for the most.
Yes, like Askeladd as a villain, I wouldn't say he's the best villain, but he's definitely one of the best written villains. He's one of them. Personally, and he's very underrated. Askeladd, in my opinion, has some great writing as a villain. And yes, come on, chat, let's be honest. He's better than 90% of the Dragon Ball villains. Now, you're Dragon Ball glazers. As a Dragon Ball fan, I'm telling y'all, Askeladd is like 100% better than 90% of the Dragon Ball villains. I'll only owe Goku Black and Perfect Cell in high regard from the Dragon Ball casting.
Most part, a pacifist his whole life, and with him being of royal blood, he was fortunate enough to not know the horror.
Yes, Prince Canute. He's been in danger almost for the first season, almost for like 90% of that first season. And Askeladd and Thorfinn had to protect his sorry ass, technically.
Was in the true gruesomeness of this Viking world, and that is until he is sent off to war by his father, and is accompanied by Askeladd's mercenary group. This all comes into fruition for Canute in episode 14 of Vinland Saga, which is quite frankly one of the hardest episodes to watch in the entire series. This episode follows a family, just a run-of-the-mill, loving dad, loving mom, and just enthusiastic kids. And with the snowstorm coming up and a harsh winter on the way.
Oh my days, am I gonna get spoiled like a lot? Because I'm on season 1, episode 12. Now I might be saying, oh, he did not watch the show. How does he? He did not watch the full show. How does he know that Askeladd is one of the best written villains? Well, I have watched 12 episodes of the first season, chat. Come on. And I know a lot of details on the second season. So yeah.
Askeladd's mercenary group invades this village and pillages them and robs them for all of their food. And after taking all of their food, Askeladd rounds up everybody in the village and begins to execute them. All 6.
Gang. I take it back. Yeah, I ain't gonna feel sorry for Askeladd. Yeah, buddy. Yo. What he did there was wrong, bro. Now you're not making me want to complete it. Now you actually making me like get pissed.
Seeing this from Canute's point of view, you realize that these Vikings are truly evil and only care about themselves, and murder is something that just is a byproduct of what happens when you're in war. And with that, You have our three main characters experiencing this Viking world from an outside point of view, and when essentially forced into this environment, it creates a deep change within all of them. Canute makes the decision to turn away from God. Thorfinn is fueled by hate and revenge, and Askeladd is fueled by the need to protect Wales by any means necessary. And being forced to change like this, it turns you into something else. It turns you into a slave.
Season 2 is definitely something to be remembered though. Season 2 is peak fiction of Vinland Saga. Season 1 was good, it had some good fight scenes. But Season 2... absolute masterpiece.
In this scene where Thorfinn meets the slave on the ship, and then she then goes on to point out that her and Thorfinn are one and the same.
Okay, this is from Season 1. I've watched the scene. It's around episode 12. And I have to say, when he said what he said, it's just chef's kiss. His dialogue in that scene was amazing.
It's truly a powerful moment in the show.
Exactly.
And quite honestly, it speaks to the grander narratives this story is trying to tell. Thorfinn pities the existence of this slave, as he doesn't quite understand how somebody can be bound to another human without feeling this overwhelming sense.
I mean, a slave is basically dependent on their owner, on the master, right? So technically, they can't run away even if they want to, because the master is serving them food and stuff. But still, someone does have free will, but the free will is limited, just because they're dependent on another person, another human being. So that's how it is even in life. Chat, you are dependent on your parents. Like the kids nowadays are dependent on their parents, and they say, oh, my phone, my Wi-Fi, my this, my that. Meanwhile, they're just dependent on their parents. They're leeching off their parents. Yet they act like they know it all. So kids, respect your parents, because they are the ones that are providing you with stuff.
The need to be free from the shackles
It doesn't cost you anything to be respectful and kind.
that hold you down. And the true irony of this scene is that Thorfinn doesn't realize that he himself is a slave too, along with everybody in this Vinland Saga universe. Thorfinn, along with Askeladd, are slaves to their own hate, as they both had traumatic things happen to them in the past, and the hate from that event caused them to throw their entire life away, changing the entire course of their existence. Prince Canute becomes a slave to God, as he feels rejected by him. Now he is driving to establish a world that is way more holy and way more peaceful than God could ever have imagined. And even King Sweyn is a slave to his crown, as he wanted to do all these moral and just things, but when the power was in his hands, it corrupted his soul, and he is now being guided by the will of the crown. And this metaphor can be extended to everybody in the Vinland Saga universe, as everybody is fueled by, and thus a slave to, greed, money, women, sex,
Come on, we are also fueled by that, guys. Come on, let's be honest with ourselves.
and power. And the worst part about all of this is that these things people are a slave to become such a crucial part of their identity, they fail to imagine what life would be like without them. What is Thorfinn without his hate for Askeladd? And what is
Exactly, it's our motivation to live on in life. Like personally, my motivation to live in life is one day to become one of the greatest streamers of all time, and to become one of the greatest directors of all time. Not only that, chat, but to tour the rest of this world. That's my motivation to live, and everybody has to have a motivation to live. Now, if you don't have a motivation to live, it can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing. It can be a good thing, meaning you're not dependent on that motivation. It could be a bad thing because if you experience something bad in your life, you'd want to finish that, right? So technically, it has pros and it has cons. It's the way your mindset is and the way you manage that motivation.
Askeladd without his hate for Danes? And what is Prince Canute without his hate for God? And even the slave on the ship says it herself, is that even she
What is a person without their motivation? That's what I would like to know, chat.
were to break free of her shackles and across the ocean, she wouldn't even know where to go. But this slave seems to be the only person to recognize that she is actually a slave to something. So ironically, this slave on the ship becomes the freest person in the world.
A person is free, but what limits them is the dependency on certain individuals.
But what does this all mean? Now that you realize how cruel and evil this Viking world is, and how being a part of it changes you fundamentally, essentially making you a slave, you start to remove yourself from these character situations and begin to assess what's truly going on here. Because what are enemies? Are they not just people you fight who live in another region?
Exactly.
A region that is under the control of a king that only answers to his own lust for power, and power that will soon be overtaken by greater powers in the future, and thus continuing the cycle? You realize that this violence you see in this Viking world isn't indicative of the moral failing of these individual Vikings, but it speaks to how it is a result of a grander narrative of power struggles, a power struggle that will never end, and most importantly, a power struggle that serves no purpose. These Vikings are only fighting to serve the interests of an imperialist world, a world that would be perfectly fine without senseless violence and murder.
Exactly. There's no need. There is freaking no need for murder and no need for any type of thing. There's no need for all of that. They can live in a peaceful world. They do not have to incorporate all those senseless stuff they do in Vinland Saga. Like, just be peaceful. Is it that hard not to have any enemies? Yes, it is. But it's all about the mindset. If the mindset can change, then you will see. By the next day, you won't have no enemies. And trust me. Trust me when I say.
You then realize that these Vikings are just a cog in the machine of something much bigger than themselves. And once you remove these Vikings from this machine and take a closer look into their hearts, you'll find that at the end of the day, you have no enemies, because all men want is peace.
W freaking video. Yes, W video, man. Yo, this video here is peak. This is the best video I've reacted to. So yeah, chat, leave a like, leave a sub, and I'll see you in my next anime philosophy video. Until then, guys, peace out, baby.